Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Derek Laurie, the president of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Federal Credit Union. Welcome to our third webinar series here, uh, fin- building a foundation for financial freedom. Uh, I want to welcome you, and we look forward to your feedback. This will be interactive, and later on, we will put out a survey to elicit your comments for feedback on this session, as well as the prior sessions that we may have had, and any future sessions that we are planning to do. Um, at this point, I am going to turn it over to Davina Ware. Davina is a consultant that we've hired to help us organize this, and she will give you some background information and introduce our speaker. Davina?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here for our third installment of the Journey to Wealth webinar series. We've learned a lot of great things so far. So if this is your first time joining us, no worries. The recordings for the other two are on the website, which is www.oppffcu.com. So if you haven't checked those out, they are available to you. But we're glad that you can be here and, to get ready to learn all this great information. We've been learning a lot thus far, things that we might think we know, but there's some little nuggets in there, I think, for everyone. So this is, like I said, our third one, and we're talking about building the foundation. We talk a lot about wealth in general, but it has to start from somewhere. So we have Curtis Baylor with us today. So excited. Curtis has been on all the calls with us as he's been part of our team and helping to put this together. And he's very passionate and very distinguished to be able to talk to you today about this information. So just so you know, I know we recently within the Divine Nine have had another organization that has started a credit union, which is great because that means we're all growing in financial literacy. But if you didn't know, our credit union has been around since 1986. So we're on our 37th year of doing this. So we've got a lot of insight and experience that we've picked up along the way. All members of the fraternity are eligible to be a part of the credit union, as well as their family members and friends and other members of the Divine Nine. And so, like I mentioned, we were technically the first to start a credit union. So a couple things about our products and services, just in case you're new with us today or new just knowing about the credit union. We have checking, savings, and money market accounts. For loans, we have auto loans, and we actually just in April and May had done a really great promotion that had some of the lowest rates in the country. So make sure you kind of keep up with us and on our mailing list as we come around again with the auto loan promotions. Debt consolidation, which is part of what's helping what we're talking about today and building a great foundation. And then loans for life membership. And then what's really great is financial support. So in addition to the loans and products that you can sign up for, there's coaching on debt, budgeting, how to buy a home, and even student loans. And there's other really cool toolkits and calculators. So if you are making a different financial decision, that you'd be able to do that with the great resources we have there. So when you get a minute or jump off this webinar, go ahead and check out the website to learn a little bit more about us. Next slide. So today, like I mentioned, we have Curtis Baylor with us, and he is on the board. So you're getting the best of the best tonight of the credit union. And he has served on the board for over 20 years and has had experience helping individuals and families develop plans to tailor to help them achieve financial freedom. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Engineering from Purdue and an MBA in Management from Loyola in Baltimore. He has a Series 6, 63, and 65 with added training for employees and retirees. He has life and health insurance licenses, and he has experience as an adjunct professor teaching both personal and business finance. So with all of that great information, Curtis, I will pass it over to you, and feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll leave room at the end to do so or in the Q&A, but this is definitely someone you want to ask questions for. So Curtis, take it away.
Thank you, Davina. Welcome, everyone. This is our agenda for the evening. Today, we're going to take a look at the impact of what good money management does for you in terms of getting you well on your way and guiding you on your journey to achieve wealth. We will take a look at some of the biggest mistakes folks make, and we'll talk about investing and some other things, and we'll talk about the tools and things you can do to overcome bad habits. When we get done this evening, you should be able to prepare and adjust the budget that you should be using to manage your money. You have an appreciation for the basics of credit and its impact on your pursuit of wealth. And you should also be able to understand the importance and impact of investing and what it has on your standard of living, which should guide you as you go along your way. Okay, there it is. These are some of the basic steps that you should take as you commence your journey to achieve wealth. First thing you should do is sit down and what are your goals on your journey to achieve wealth? When do you want to retire? How much do you want to have an income when you retire? What things do you want to do along the way? You want to start a business? You don't have a degree, you want to get one. You already have a degree, you want to get another one. You want to get married, you want to send your children to college, you want to buy a home. What are the goals you have for yourself in life? So please sit down and say what those goals are. We'll talk more about those goals should be, first of all, time specific, dollar specific, so that you can begin to plan how much time and what you need to be setting aside to achieve those goals. And the other thing is set the goals in today's dollars. What I mean is if I wanted to retire at age 65 and I said at 65, I want to have $70,000 a year in income guaranteed to me, use that for today's dollars. And then when you adjust the goal, you account for inflation, and we'll talk about that later on. After you got your goals, make a budget. Your budget should be tied in to what your goals are so you can manage your money. Stick to your budget. And we'll talk about adjusting and what you need to do. Another thing is, please, 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 do not use credit to pay your bills. With an exception of, I'll tell you what I mean by, in terms of don't use it long term, but you can use your credit card to pay your bills. But when the bills come, pay it when the time is due. Build up your emergency. Build for an emergency and a pay cash fund. What's the difference? Emergency. You live in a house, water heater bursts, whatever, you have to replace it. Automobile, something needs to be done to get it fixed, emergency fund. We have a situation where I've lost my employment. And I guide you here and says, well, how many months is it going to take you to get a job paying you what you're being paid now? And then a pay cash fund is, I want to have a down payment for my home. I'm looking to buy a new car. I want to have pay cash when I go out. If I see something, a chance to take a trip I hadn't had before, I can go to my pay cash fund and be able to do that. So make sure you have a budget emergency fund set aside for emergencies and pay cash. Automate your financial life. If you have recurring bills, set them up on automatic bank draft so that you don't have to worry about a late payment happening to you. Manage your debt from the start, when you first start having debt, and continue to do so. Be aware of good debt versus bad debt. Good debt is basically something you need. I need shelter. I need transportation and aids to building wealth. I want to get further education. I want to own a home. I want to start a business. Versus bad debt, impulse buys, wants, and buy those kinds of things. And then, of course, an unrealistic lifestyle. You're making $35,000 a year and you want to live like you're making $100,000 a year. That's an unrealistic lifestyle in your budget. and then things like timeshares and that kind of thing. And you do all that with debt, and then you put a lodestone around yourself and you're trying to drag that along on your journey to achieve wealth. Track your credit score. Recommend you check it probably at least once a year. Nowadays, if you have a credit card, you can go in and check your credit score instantaneously, real time, anytime you open it up, and it can change from month to month, but track your credit score. Match your investments to your goals. So if you have a goal for retirement, set what time it is, match some investments towards what that retirement is. Education, 529 plans. I'll talk some more about mentioning about what some of those are. So basically match your investments to what your goals are. Stay diversified. So I talked this thing about knowing what your risk tolerance is. Are you conservative? Are you aggressive, moderately aggressive? And that can change over time depending upon what your goal is and how close you are to the goal. The closer you get to the goal, you've got the dollars built up, you should become a little bit more conservative. Example I would use in 2008, a lot of folks were looking to retire. They had their money sitting in their 401k, and the market took a crash. And so folks who had $500,000, $1 million in their retirement accounts and were looking to retire, market went down 25, almost 50% in some cases. And now they found themselves not being able to retire when they thought they wanted to, all because they did not adjust their retirement dollars into something more conservative as opposed to leaving it to the whims of the market. So stay diversified. And then,
Curtis,
yes,
before you leave that, I wanted to highlight, you mentioned check your credit score.
yes,
the credit union offers to all of its members, as well as to the fraternity as a whole, something called a credit report check. Once you have acquired your credit report from the three institutions, TransUnion, Equifax, and I forget the third one off the top of my head, you can call the balance people, schedule some time with them, and they will do a comprehensive analysis with you at no charge to you. That is a service that we provide.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because yes, that is an opportunity to provide that. So yes, we provide that service. Thank you. And the other thing is save and invest. As you get more in earnings, save and invest more of those earnings, as opposed to using the bulk of it to basically raise your lifestyle level, because you're cheating yourself and extending the time when you will be able to, quote unquote, perhaps retire. So just be aware of that. I'll mention here as I go along, if you have questions for me, put your hand in the chat. I'll ask maybe Davina, folks, to keep an eye on that. And when you do that, depending upon what it is, I would address it to say, I'm going to get to that, or hold that thought, or wait till the end. Let's talk about some of the challenges that folks face on their journey to wealth. Well, challenge number one, a lot of folks don't have a budget. I taught a class on personal finance, and folks said, I don't think I need a budget. I don't have a budget. I don't keep track of my money. Well, if you don't know where your money's going, how can you manage it? And what benchmark are you using to see, are you getting ahead in the game or not? So you have no budget, or they have an unrealistic budget, or a budget that they say is not working for them. Challenge number two, folks either have no credit, poor credit, or damaged credit. And what do you do with that? And then challenge number three, folks have no investments, or they have insufficient investments upon which to retire. I mentioned the situation that happened in 2008 when folks had their 401ks hit as a result of the market going down. And then also, folks, as they begin to draw off their dollars in retirement, what can happen is those investments are diminishing over time. And if they don't keep track of that, they can get to the point where they perhaps run out of money, or their level of lifestyle continues to decline. So let's take a look at the challenges and talk about how we can put a roadmap together and address and overcome each of those particular challenges as we face them. Challenge number one, simply put, it says no budget. If you have no budget, you have no plan, or desire to pursue wealth? Why am I not achieving wealth? If you have no budget, you have no plan or desire to pursue wealth. So if you get off of this and you say, I'm not going to do a budget, well, then good luck with you. To become wealthy, you need to manage your money. You need to know where it's going. An unrealistic budget. Your budget needs to be zero based. What do I mean by that? If you're making $35,000, if you're making $3,000 a month and you're budgeting for the month, then you have $3,000 coming in. And when you allocate across the budget to all of the areas you're trying to cover, at the end, you should have $0. So zero based. All coming in matches all that's going out. Next thing, pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. Next, pay your taxes. And then live off the rest that's left over. Pay yourself first, and then pay your taxes. Number 3, the budget is not working for you. Well, probably the reason it's not working is because it's not tied to your financial goals. And so it's not allocated across the areas in order to support your financial goals. Example, you may have maxing out on your retirement plan. And as a result of maxing out on your retirement plan, you don't have enough dollars left over to put into savings for an immediate emergency or pay cash fund. Could be an example of what that might mean. Challenge number 2, no credit. Here, the idea is start as soon as you can to establish credit. The best time to establish credit and ask for credit is when you don't need it. Because a lot of times if you wait till you need it, you aren't going to qualify to get it. So start as soon as you can to establish some credit and start a credit history. So when we go to the case study, I'll talk about a situation which the individual there, something they may have considered in terms of starting and establishing their credit. Number 2, poor credit. Key, stick to good debt. Stick, and I already talked about what good debt is, and stay away from bad debt. Sometimes you may have a little bit of bad debt that may creep in there some kind of way, but the best you can do is stay away from it, because when we go through the income ratios, I talked about that, you can end up having a problem. So under poor credit, calculate your debt to income ratio before you borrow money. Because you may have a particular debt to income ratio, and then all of a sudden you go out and borrow money, and you borrow that money and it flips your debt to income ratio, which means you can't get any more credit because you created a problem for yourself. Your debt to income ratio is determined by how much you have in monthly debts divided by what your monthly income is. And generally, they want that number to be 30% or less. Next, keep your monthly unsecured debt balance at or under 10% of your annual income. So if you have $5,000 due on a credit card, unsecured, and you're making $50,000 a year, that means your unsecured debt balance is 10%. You need to stay at 10% or less in terms of taking a look at your credit. And the next thing it talks about damaged credit. And there you need to look at the elements of your credit score so that you can make adjustments in your debt and your habits and whatever in order to improve and raise your credit score. An example would be your credit score is, let me see, well, I'll use an example. I had a person who checked their credit score. They thought they had a good credit score. It was like 712. And they had $8,000 due on a credit card, $9,000 due on a credit card. And that gave them fair, close to good credit. But if you're in 750 or better, it would have been much better for them going forward in terms of trying to home ownership. And it showed that if they had no credit card debt, meaning they had no $9,000 out due on their credit cards, their credit score would have been 750. So keep track of that and be aware of those types of things. Challenge number 3, no investments. When you get your first job, remember I said pay yourself first? And I'll talk about the breakout of what that should look like, but start investing with the very first job you get. General, investments are the best hedge against inflation. What do I mean by that? You invest your money, it grows over time, and on the average, the stock market over history does about 10%, and inflation is somewhere 3 or 6. So that means investments are generally the best hedge against inflation, meaning you don't want to, it takes more money to buy eggs, bread, etc. as time moves forward, and you need investments in order to be able to have your life, be able to maintain your lifestyle off a certain amount of dollars downstream. Insufficient investments. So again, invest towards your goals. Account for taxes, inflation, and fluctuations in the market. So that's why I said develop a goal, make it time specific, make the amount that you want to have specific, take into the factors of the inflation and all those kinds of things, and then begin. That'll tell you how much you need to invest to get towards your goals. Next, diminishing investments. Keep an eye on the next days you set aside for yourself and adjust the mix and the drawdowns on your investments to prevent running out of money. Let's talk about going through here, talking about budget and credit, because the main foundation, as I'm talking about here, is going to be having a good budget and watching your credit. We already had a session last week on credit. We also talked about home ownership, and I'll touch on that a bit. So again, when you put a budget together, here's some things you should be checking. Is it zero-based? That means all in is covered and all out is covered, zero-based. Allocation. I talked about paying yourself first and then paying taxes. I don't apologize. I'm a believer, and I believe Omega Psi Phi Fraternity is a Christian-based organization based on Christian manhood. And so therefore, that means if you're a good Christian, you're supposed to tithe, and the minimum is 10%. So you should pay God first, his 10% off your gross, pay yourself 20%. And I'll talk about the allocation for that is about 5% for that 20%, 5% for savings, 5% for insurance, health, income, and life insurance, and 10% toward your investment goals. That's the 20% generally to pay yourself. Next, pay taxes, and whatever the federal rate is, plus Social Security, employment tax, and Medicare. But generally speaking, my recommendation is that you assume that your taxes are going to be 25% of your gross when you add all of that together, which means if you add all those numbers together, you should be living off of 45% of your gross. And if you're not living off of 45% of your gross, that means somewhere along the way, you're either cheating God, cheating yourself, or not paying your taxes. Living expenses. Make sure you cover needs before wants. You go in and take a look at some kind of guides in terms of what amount of your gross you should be the maximum amount for any particular areas. I'll show those there: 10 to 15% for food, 25 to 30% for shelter and utilities, 15 to 20% for your vehicle, 5 to 10% for clothing, personal stuff. That's clothing and grooming and your hobbies, and 5 to 10% for entertainment. So you got all of the mix in terms of looking at those things as you begin to put your budget together. And also make sure, again, address your financial goals, such as home ownership, retirement, education. Credit checklist. Again, start as soon as you can. Remember good versus bad debt. Make sure your debt to income ratio. If it says that generally for your debt to income ratio, housing should be at most 31% of your debt to income ratio. And then including everything else, 43% for your debt to income ratio. And then I also talked about the minimum monthly unsecured debt balance, and then obtain and maintain a good credit score. Let me pause here for a second to see if there's any questions in the chat or any questions anybody would like to ask before I move forward. Nothing?
Nothing right now.
There's none in the chat yet, Curtis.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'm an educator by trade, and my parents always taught me when you're teaching, if you stop and ask for questions, and if you don't have any questions, then you ask questions of them. So trust me, when I get to the point, I'm going to start firing back at y'all. Let's take a look at our case study here, and this will be we'll pull out. It's going to be tricky here because I'm going to go to the case study, and then I'm going to stop sharing this part of the slide screen and then share an actual budget, and we're going to walk through some of the things we talked about. So bear with me here. So first of all, this particular person we're talking about, we're going to take a look at a budget for somebody who's a new teacher. I'm going to assume just graduated from college about a year or so ago. And so that makes, in this case, it's a young man. And so we'll say he's probably somewhere around 22, 23 years old. He's making $35,000 a year. He lives in the state, and then he's got limited credit. He has one small individual credit card, $750 limit. He's paying $20 a month. He's also an authorized user on his parents' credit card, and the limit on there is $9,000, and his parents will generally pay that for him if need be. He also has a student loan of $70,000 that's in deferment. His rent's $650 a month. He lives by himself, and it says his purchases. I'm going to say here he's looking to purchase or about to purchase a $28,000 vehicle at 7.5% for 78 months, and the monthly payment is going to be $455. So let me stop sharing this particular stuff, and then I'm going to ask you, Davina, to be prepared if I lose track here to pull that back up. Let me hit my share screen again. And I want to go, I got to go get my file. Pardon me for a second here while I go get it. Wait a minute, what's happening here? Why can't I get that slide to get that presentation to close? Can you see somebody help me here to get me
Curtis,
out of it?
You can minimize it by hitting the underscore bar. Just don't close it.
There we go. Yeah. Okay.
So you can bring
Because
it
what I'm
up.
trying to do is I'm trying to get to that particular slide. So I got to exit. There we go. Exit full screen. Okay, there we go. Why is that? Okay. I'm still looking at the slide, the presentation. Is that because it's
hit your escape button so you can take it out of full screen mode. ESC.
Yeah, I did that. Okay, just bear with me here. I thought I did that. Okay. My view, just do gallery and escape and let's see.
Curtis, is this something I can share on my end?
No, I got it now. Let's see. Where's this one? I think this is it. There we go. And go there, there. and share and there. There we go. Can you see that?
It's coming. There we go. All right.
You see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so again, I remind you that the individual we had slide up was making $35,000 a year. That's $2,917 a month. That's all that's coming in. That's his gross. Next thing, he's paying $650 a month in rent. We'll assume he only has to pay under home expense. Again, it should be 25 to 30% of his budget. So he's paying $650 right now. We'll assume he's paying electricity. That's all he has to pay, the trash and sewer and whatever is being by the landlord or whatever the case may be. He's got a phone and he's got internet and cable. So he's paying $850 for his home expenses. Those are the items that are listed under there. You see some other things that could be furnishings, could be if he had to maintain whatever, but in this particular case, $750. Next thing that's happening is he's groceries should be somewhere 15 to 20% of his what he's spending. So that's allocated. He allocated $290 for that. Let me go across before I get to this other place. He is working for a school system, and he's setting aside about gain for investments should be maybe 10% or so of his gross, if you'll recall, that I mentioned there. So 2917 times 0.05. That's about $145 a month. So he's setting aside about 5% or so of his, because that's what they will match here on his savings and investment, about 15%. So 5% is being put aside for his employer. And I will mention here, if you take notes or whatever, retirement planning. Here should be your priority of dollars for retirement investing. First place is to put dollars up to the matching of what your employer will do. So if your employer is matching 5% and you can afford to do it, do 5% because you're getting free money. Of course, you also need to take into account whether or not how soon the money will be vested, meaning how long do you have to be with the employer before the amount they have matched becomes yours should you leave. But at any rate, first place is to try to invest as much as you can up to what they match if it fits within your budget. After that, if you qualify, you should do a Roth IRA. I think the cap on single folks for a Roth contribution is annual income, I think, of $160,000 or less. I don't know the exact number right now, but you need to check that. But in any case, for this particular young man, he's only making $35,000. He definitely qualifies for a Roth IRA. But he's not putting in any money towards that right now, but he is matching his employer plan. They do 5%, he's matching. So that's his pay himself, if you will. Taxes, he's paying $20 towards his credit card debt of $750. You see there, he's got a student loan, he's deferred, but it's $70,000. So at some point he's got to pay that. Taxes, federal taxes are 12% given his income. State and local is 3.15. And then you see the FICA, and then he's putting a little bit extra dollars aside in case taxes get some other things, or taxes may go up around 25%. So you see that total there, $751, how that goes in. How much he's spending for groceries. He's considering getting that vehicle, and if he does that, the payment on that vehicle is going to be $455 a month. He's tithing. I'm sorry. This is the insurance, auto insurance for a $28,000 vehicle, and what he's got be about $150 a month for the vehicle, and then he's rental insurance would be about $25 a month. You see there, he has no help in this scenario. we'll start looking for some things that we may look as whether or not this budget is realistic. Charity and gifts, there's nothing there. And so you see that right now, taking into account everything that he's doing or contemplating doing at this point in time, he would have $246 left to allocate to be zero-based.
Hey, Curtis, we have a question from Wayne Leonard. Wayne, I'm gonna take you, allow you to talk. I'll take you off mute.
Perfect.
If you want to ask your question yourself, you may.
Go right ahead, Wayne. Which question?
You have to unmute, Wayne. Okay, I'll ask it on his behalf. Maybe he's having some issues.
Okay.
He says on debt to income ratio, should your income be based on net income after taxes and Social Security?
No, it is gross. Your debt to income ratio is based on your gross. In this case, his debt to income ratio, without considering the fact that rent is required, in my case, in terms of an obligation, but without the rent, his debt to income ratio would be about 16.28%, which wouldn't be bad. But the fact is, he's required to expenses, and so I would say with the rent included, his debt to income ratio would be about 38%. Good question. Any others?
Hold on, he has a follow-up.
Okay. That's Melvin. What you got, Melvin?
No, this is Wayne. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wayne, should part of saving 5% be toward a dividend portfolio to generate income as you grow older? If you
That's
start
that's what the retirement fund is. And when he talks about which should the nature of the retirement fund be, that depends on, again, how soon he wants the money, what his risk tolerance is, and so it's timeline, amount he's trying to have at the end of the timeline, and what his risk tolerance is along the way.
Wayne, I see you raise your hand. If you unmute, you can ask any follow-up.
Can you hear me? I got two follow-up questions.
Sure.
So based on the income question, as I've grown older, and I'm about 63, I began to realize that this debt to income maybe needs to be skewed more to after taxes.
No, that's not how they do it.
I understand. Let me finish. Let me finish. Because you're going to pay taxes, and that comes out of your income anyway. And what's left over after you pay all your taxes is really your, for my lack of a better word, your real income that you have to do whatever.
Okay, well,
so
my
response when you apply into your taxes, which in some people's cases could be 15 or 20% of their gross, really what you're going to have to pay taxes regardless, not unless you have some kind of tax shelter or haven that dodges you from paying taxes. You're going to pay taxes regardless, but what you're really left over after you pay taxes, this is really my disposable income that I have to do whatever I need to do.
Okay, well, my response to that is your thinking is how can I put it? A good guide for folks to use as they begin to plan their budget. But when I said the fact is that the creditors calculate your debt to income ratio off of your gross. Now, given what you're telling me, the smart thing to do to make sure that you never bust your debt to income ratio and get yourself using bad credit to pay bills would be a smart thing to do, is to say, I want my debt to income ratio to not be 31% against my gross, but 31% against my net. So I know I'll always be able to pay taxes. And that's what you're saying. And that would be a good thing for folks to do. But most folks don't know to do that or think to do that. They don't even know what the debt to income ratio is. And so I agree with you that is a smart thing to do, but that is not how the banks and folks and creditors calculate it.
I concur. I'm just saying, as I've grown older, I begin to realize that when you do a debt to income ratio, sometimes that maybe inflates your or reduces your ratio based on your available income to spend. If that makes sense.
You're exactly right. And another thing is, the smart thing to add to that is, what happens is, a lot of folks, what they'll do is the realtors and everybody else and potential lenders will look at your debt to income ratio, and they will tell you that Mr. Baylor, you qualify, given your credit history, et cetera, and what your gross income is, that you could afford to purchase a $350,000 house and have a house note of $1,500 a month. But then if you do that, you will end up being house poor. So to avoid doing that is probably do exactly what you said. How much do I really think I can afford to carry every month, and make sure everything else, taxes and everything else, gets paid? But you don't know that if you don't do what? If you have no budget, you don't know that, do you?
You don't. You're exactly correct. And then I did have one additional question. As I've grown older, and I've seen what I call some savvy investors who maybe took part of their savings and built a dividend portfolio over time. And that would allow them, as they age, or you decide to have kids, if you get married and both of you are working, and you could set up a plan jointly, that if one spouse wanted to stay at home, if you had started a saving strategy that allowed dividends to be paid to you, periodically, that could be a source of income for the spouse that stays at home with the kid. But also, as you grow older, besides your retirement, what I'm beginning to realize is, when you go to retire, we have this nice 401k, but sometimes what we don't factor in is other sources of income besides your 401k that are coming to you, that you're not working for, that allows you to do these bucket lists, what if ideals that you might come up with, that now you got this stream of income.
Well, let me hold up. I appreciate the dialogue there, but you're drifting off deeply into investment strategies. And the thing I will say here is the fact that we'll talk more about investing later on, but you're right on the point of, when I talked about multiple goals and matching your goals and allocating your investments towards that, your objective should be to have, when you retire and even throughout, multiple income streams. So if you had a diversified portfolio, like you said, you and your wife would be working, well, that means if one of you lost your job, you'd still be getting what I call a wake-up check off of your dividend checks coming to you. And so you want to make sure you have multiple income streams. And then, of course, when you get to the point where you're retiring at maybe 65 or so, you want to be able to get money from where? Your 401k, meaning your retirement plan, 401k, 403b, whatever it is. Maybe for some other investments, like you said, that are not in that kind of a portfolio, like your dividend portfolio. You also will want to be getting, hopefully, your Social Security check. And you also want to have a couple other buckets sitting off to the side that you aren't tapping into, so that as inflation hits and things happen, you can tap into that to turn on another revenue stream. But we'll talk about, that's a whole different subject to talk about for investing. That's not a foundation thing. That's an end game thing. Okay. So some other hands raised.
Yeah, Wayne, let's allow us to go to Melvin and cycle back to you for if you have other questions. So at this point, I'm going to bring Melvin up so you can ask your question. Yeah, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Okay, Brother Baylor.
Yes, sir, Melvin. How you doing?
Doing fine, brother. Great presentation so far. Brother Baylor, I'm looking at your the monthly household budget. I see we have your emergency fund, 8751. Are you gonna should they be putting money in there every month to build that emergency fund up? Am I missing something here?
Well, no. But the thing about it is what I'm showing is where this young man is.
Oh, okay, okay.
And if he buys that car. So you're right on point. The point of the matter is the question is this budget realistic? Well, let's look at some of the things like you said, your perfect front man that is missing. So let's take a look at home. First, let's take a look at home expenses. Looks like he's covered all his bases, right? Paying his rent, paying his utilities, got a phone, got internet. We go down to his living, personal things, okay, and we see groceries, right? But suppose he had to pay for dry cleaning, for his clothes, for his suits, and if he wears coats and ties or whatever, that type of thing. There's nothing, if he needs to buy clothing, so is he cutting his own hair? There's nothing listed to cover it. All we're covering is just groceries, nothing else in there under his daily living. Of course, this guy's single, so don't have to worry about children. But then we talk about transportation. You see, if he buys the car, how much is it costing? $455. You see any dollars allocated for gas? You see any dollars allocated to pay for repairs? You see any dollars allocated to be able to renew his license and registration?
Nope.
No, you don't.
Nope.
So it's something missing, ain't it? He ain't accounted for everything he should be covering.
Lots missing.
Then you go down even next thing, you see nothing, health expenses. It says he doesn't have any, but then when you go to his insurance, he's paying auto insurance, but you don't see any health insurance, do you?
Nope. No co-pays or nothing.
He ain't paid. Well, I mean, no, but he's not paying a monthly premium for health insurance, which says that the assumption I would make here is that he's 20, like I said, he's 22 years old. And he's fortunate enough that he's still on mom and dad's health insurance until he turns 26.
Good point.
And if he doesn't budget for that when he turns 26, if he ain't got enough of a pay raise, homeboy's going to be in trouble, ain't he?
Yep.
He has no life insurance and he has no disability insurance. Why is disability insurance important? Well, you should, when you talk about insurance, remember I put down health insurance, life insurance, and disability insurance. Disability insurance protects him if he gets injured and loses and can't work. So if he gets injured on the job, he may get short-term disability, but then his paycheck is reduced and he has no income. What's he going to do? So that's not covered. He's not doing any tithing or charitable gifts. And then you point out, Melvin, has no emergency fund, does he? Nope. So if he has an emergency, he's in deep doo-doo. So the question I'd ask you here, if you were advising this young man, would you advise him to spend $455 on a car?
Nope, you can't afford it.
You can't afford to do it. So before you go buy something, see how that's going to impact your budget and what it's going to do to your debt to income ratio. But if he just went out and bought it, now he's stuck in it, he's in deep doo-doo. Now let's talk about that emergency fund you mentioned. Remember I said that he should have maybe 3 to 6 months in his emergency fund. So 6 months. Let me see, emergency fund. Yeah. So 20, I did 2917. So 3 months of emergency fund for him would be $8,751. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I were advising him in that area, what do you think I might tell him to do?
I would
If he
tell
has if he has an emergency, what should he plan for to use to cover his emergency?
he should be using some of that money that he's going to put toward that car toward that emergency.
Well, the first thing, you good start in there. But remember, he has a credit card with a $9,000 limit that his parents have, right?
Mm-hmm.
He needs to plan on that for his emergency fund. If it for an emergency, that he's going to make sure that that credit limit, that if he say, I may say, charge something maybe $50 a month so that the card doesn't get lack for use. If you use it, when it comes, make sure you pay it to help have your credit history going along. And then if you had a dire emergency, that's your emergency. That's 3 months of emergency fund until such time as you have the money in there of your own.
That makes sense.
Okay.
That makes good sense.
And so the thing is I would tell him to, in this case, if he were to set aside, and I will tell folks that you can catch up on investing, but an emergency will kick you in your butt. And what happens what folks do a lot of times is they maximize their 401k over their retirement fund. Then an emergency happens and they have no emergency savings. And what do?
Pull money out of there and pay a penalty.
They pull the money out of there and pay a penalty and end up paying the taxes and paying a penalty for being stupid. So in this case, he's putting 5% towards the matching money. And if he would be putting a total of 15%, then we might make a recommendation that he put maybe $50 or so towards the emergency fund. But I would be building on a pay cash fund because emergency is less likely to happen to him needing to be able to go and have a big pay cash. And if you put in the pay cash amount, I would recommend he do is whatever the interest rate is on that credit card that mom and dad have, that he has a pay cash account that he can make sure he can maintain the payments on that should he have an emergency and have to use it.
Makes sense. Makes good sense.
So that takes care of savings and investments. So then you go down to student loans. He doesn't have. I would suggest that he perhaps up into his. He take a look at when might that hit, and when might I have to start paying that, and maybe pull a little bit of the money out of what he would have been paying for a car, and maybe put that in a pay cash account, so that hopefully when that gets turned on, maybe he can afford to make part of the payments for that. And if he's got cash on hand right now, I'd pay that $20 credit card, that credit card debt off, because that's ridiculous to pay $20. I mean, that's pay interest to pay $20 a month so that you can do something else. No, don't do that. And then of course you got the taxes and whatever else is going on. Other comments or questions and thoughts?
He needs a part-time job like me.
Well, I taught this stuff, Any other questions or thoughts?
We don't see any other questions in the chat, Curtis.
All right, so let me so I think that I've kind of covered that. So let me stop sharing that. And then we go back to share my screen again. And go back here. And go back to
You were on slide 12, I think, last.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm going to go back to the checklist again.
Okay.
So let's do kind of a review when we talk about a budget and credit. so I can kind of drive home some thoughts here, and hopefully you've learned and seen. Number one, zero based off of gross, not net. And make sure that at the end of the day, you've covered all of your reasonable expenses: food, shelter, utilities, transportation, fuel, maintenance, insurance on the vehicle, personal clothing, grooming, any hobbies. This young man, if he's in a organization that has dues, there's no dollar set aside for that. There was no dollar sit down there for him to be able to entertain himself with that little bit of $246 left over. So make sure you cover everything that applies to you, and make sure of whatever your priorities are. Again, the split of paying yourself first, I recommend it be 20%, 5% towards savings, 5% towards insurance, 10% towards investment goals. If you have to make a choice in terms of priorities starting out, first one should be insurance. Because if you don't insure your income and you lose your income, you're screwed. If you don't have insurance for your health, you're screwed. And then life insurance, if you plan on having life insurance is based on how old you are, how healthy you are. The sooner you get some, you'll have it if you want to have a family later on in life. Plus the other thing, a properly funded life insurance policy. We talk later on about investing in everything can be also used as an investment vehicle, but I don't want to go down too deep on that. So, but insurance, make sure you're prepared to cover emergencies and pay cash, and then catch up on investments. Because surely life goals, emergencies will kick you in the butt before you have an investment goal. Usually the first investment goal folks should have, in my personal opinion, is to own your own home. So do that. Yes.
Curtis, may I chime in? I know this is your presentation, but a technique I know I've used, I've heard several other individuals who've used this. And when I say others, I'm talking about people in their late 20s, early 30s. When you talk about those discretionary funds that you're able to spend, like on your savings and travel and entertainment, that you have another account that you put a little bit in there, so that when it's time to spend for that vacation or that other event, when you see that particular account getting to zero, you know you've exhausted your splurging money, put it that way.
Well, that's a good example of DL of what I was talking about in terms of having an emergency fund and a pay cash account. So you're right. And then the next thing is I hope I come back and ask any questions you might have. But the other thing is on the credit, start as soon as you can. For this young man, my recommendation would be if he has access to his parents' credit card and his name is on it, that means he has a credit history and he should be using it periodically and pay the payments, because that's going to help go towards his credit history. He's got that $750 card, and he needs to go see what his credit score is and begin to manage that and stick with that. And I would suggest he starts setting money aside so he can have his own home, so that he's paying $650 a month right now for rent. And if he would qualify, he'd probably be better off finding himself a home if he could find one where he was paying maybe $800-900 a month for home ownership. With the tax write-off and the ability to grow equity in his home, that he might be able to use and leverage later on for doing some other things. So I'll stop here and not stop here, but let me go to the next screen. That's our young man. Here's some resources that are available to you. I've asked Davina where she will. I don't know, Davina, I sent you those files. Did you get those?
Yes, I'll post them.
Okay, good. So one of them is 7 important financial tips from the Bible about money. Next one is a book called Personal Finance for Dummies. The next one is a Sailor Personal Finance book that was put out. It's a online thing. And then for the credit, go to the visit www.oppfcu.com. That's where our president, Director Lauer, was talking to you about the balance, where you can go in and do some things there on tracking with credit. Also, I provided a financial checklist. I provided a risk tolerance form, I think, that you can look at. What else? The portions of that the components of your credit score, and some things you can take a look at there. You want to contact us and you want to contact me, you can, I'll give you my personal email address in a minute. But that's how to contact us at the credit union and what we're doing on the board and that type of thing. Questions, comments, concerns, folks? Yes, Melvin. Yeah, got which questions? Come off mute, sir.
Brother Baylor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Brother Baylor, I've always had a little side hustle job. That's what that helped me get myself.
I'm sorry, you always had what?
A part-time job, a little side hustle job. I used to build up a Christmas fund and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah.
Would you recommend someone, especially if someone young like that starting out, that they have a side hustle job that fill up some of those gaps so their income gets a little higher? Or would you recommend that?
Right. What about it?
I said, would you recommend, since his income so low, wouldn't you recommend he get a little part-time job?
Well, no. Well, I mean, my recommend. I mean, remember I talked about revenue streams.
Mm-hmm.
So, you say for you, it's a part-time job. For example, this young man, maybe he gets a job tutoring, or maybe he knows how to play in a band. You're exactly right. I mean, but the whole thing about it is that all depends on what are his goals, and can he use the extra income? And when he does that, he should also include that where in his budget.
It's discretionary.
No, he puts it down. All of what he makes on his side job is what? That's part of his gross income, right? All in, all out, right?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
And then he should allocate the dollars from that income towards all the other things. And if he wants to, and in the example there, it may be a situation where what he does is he said, I am going to live off of what I earn through my main job. And my side hustle job is where I'm going to use to build up my emergency cash. The side hustle job is where I'm going to use to have my have good time cash. It's where I'm also going to use to build up my fund to be able to have a down payment for my home later on. It may also be the side hustles. That's where he's going to build up a small bucket of money so that when the student loan comes due, he can start making payments initially out of that before, as he gets a pay raise or whatever the case may be. So it's all how you want to allocate it, but he needs to account for all of it and put it across in the categories towards what his personal goals and objectives are.
Thank you.
Good point, though.
Hey, Curtis.
Yes.
We appreciate that presentation. We're a few minutes over. Don't want to hold the folks too much longer. However, I wanted to remind folks we will be posting the audio of this presentation as well as the presentation on the Omega Credit Union's website, which is www.oppffcu.com. And if you just think Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Federal Credit Union, those acronyms will get you there. In addition, a survey will go out and we will elicit your feedback on this one as well as the others, and potential webinars that we could do to better enlighten you all on things that may be of interest to you regarding financial independence. At this point, Curtis, we want to thank you for all of your hard efforts of putting this together. Thanks, Davina, for your work of coordinating this. And to all of you on the call, we appreciate your participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much, y'all. Enjoy yourselves. Have a great evening and
Thank
good luck
you.
out there on your pursuit of wealth.
Thank you.